Yo, what's up, everybody? Andrew Mahone here with Darium's Competitive Pokemon. Today, we are going to be talking about a new deck in standard format. We are looking at Zoroark GX, Lycanroc GX. Now, this is Ryan Sablehouse's list that I am showing. He just recently shared it online, and he had just won a League Cup with it recently. Ryan Sablehouse, very accomplished player in the Pokemon trading card game, so I figure his list is as good as any to look at. This list borrows a lot of things from Tord Reklev's European International Championship winning Golisopod GX Zoroark GX deck. You could see there the puzzles of time and things like that. The lists are very similar, but the decks do operate a little bit differently, and this seems to be a popular choice amongst competitive players heading into the Memphis Regional Championship, so I wanted to make sure that I took some time to get the list out before this weekend. To start things off, we do play 3 copies of Zoroark GX, 1 copy of the stand-in Zoroark, which I really love in this list and any deck that plays Zoroark for that matter. We also play 4 copies of the Zorua, the one with Ram, of course, since we do not play any copies of Rainbow or Darkness Energy. We also play 2 copies of Lycanroc GX, 3 copies of Rockruff, 1 Buzzwall GX, 1 Mewtwo from Evolutions, and 3 copies of Taboole. So let's talk about these guys real quick. The main attacker of this deck, of course, is Zoroark GX. And Zoroark GX just makes an excellent main attacker with that Riotous Beating attack. With Choice Band and Professor Kukui in the deck, you can hit up to 170 damage with that Riotous Beating, which is just great numbers. I mean, a lot of Pokemon have 170 hit points, most notably Taboole GX, but there are some other GX Pokemon with that 170 hit point mark. Most of the time, however, you're going to be, doing pointed 2-hit knockouts with Riotous Beating, kind of just chipping away at Pokemon consistently and hitting them down in 2 shots, and just being able to draw all the cards you need to make sure that you target down whatever you want on your opponent's side of the field and can consistently heal with cards like Acerola as well. Zoroark GX, just a very aggressive attacker, being able to get that turn 2 attack very often, just being able to draw with trade and then find your double colorless energies with ease and fill up the bench easily as well. The deck is just very consistent, and that's what makes Zoroark one of the most appealing attackers in standard format, because it is a support Pokemon, it draws cards, and it also is a valid attacker. So we do love that. Now, one of the options you have in the deck for one-hit KO power is this stand-in Zoroark. So many decks in standard are filling their bench as early as the first turn of the game. Turn 1 Lele for Bridget, that's 4 spots right there, and Mind Jack just takes advantage of the opponent who is filling their bench. I mean, first of all, Zoroark GX, in order to get the most damage with Riotous Beating, is going to be filling its bench all the time too. So Mind Jack takes advantage of Zoroark decks very easily. With 5 bench Pokemon, that's 150 plus the 10, 160 damage. With Choice Band, that's 190. With Kukui, you can hit a whole 210 damage with this Mind Jack Zoroark if you have all the stars aligned to hit that perfect math. And 210, of course, is just excellent numbers. Zoroark GX has 210 hit points. Golisopod GX has 210 hit points. Lycanroc has 200, so you can knock out a Lycanroc as well. Zoroark with the Mind Jack attack is just very, very good. Also, stand-in does give you some mobility. If you happen to find your 1 copy of Floatstone, you could evolve into the stand-in Zoroark, attach the Floatstone, and stand in and retreat to whoever you would want to move whoever into the active position. Now, one of Zoroark's primary weaknesses is Buzzwall GX, who we do play, but in order to counter a fully loaded Buzzwall GX, we do play Mewtwo, which is just a pain for Buzzwall to deal with. A Buzzwole with 3 energy on it is being hit for 2, 4, 6, 8, 160 damage with a Choice Band. That's going to be a 1-hit knockout on that Buzzwole. Mewtwo takes care of Buzzwole very easily. Also, if you don't happen to be able to find your Choice Band, you have the option to Kukui as well to knock out a Buzzwole in 1 hit. Even if a Buzzwole is not fully loaded, say you're just attacking into a Buzzwole with 1 energy attached, 20 damage plus 20 more damage for the 1 energy with that psychic attack, plus a choice band 40, 70. You can hit 140 damage with the choice banded psychic against a Buzzwall with just 1 energy, and that really hurts. Since Buzzwall is going to be having a hard time knocking out this Mewtwo, Jet Punch does usually not even 2-hit KO this thing. That would be very difficult to obtain a 2-hit KO with a Jet Punch. So a lot of times, Buzzwall is going to be targeting this thing down on the bench, trying to snipe it. But if Buzzwall does manage to knock it out, you can always rescue Stretcher the Mewtwo back or puzzle it back and get it right back into action. So this thing is a pain for Buzzwall to deal with and does keep that card in check, since most of your deck is very weak to Buzzwall. Speaking of Buzzwall, we do play our own copy. Buzzwall is just so good in standard format. Early aggression with Jet Punch is just very strong. There are some situations where you could just run your opponent off the board early with Jet Punch, and it's just excellent option to have. I had a game on PTCGO that I showed off recently with this deck where I just went in with an early Jet Punch and then, finished a Greninja deck off with Knuckle Impact, just going early aggression with the Buzzwall GX, and was really able to run my opponent off the field that way as well. With Lycanroc, you could Bloodthirsty Eyes, bring up whoever you want on your opponent's side of the field, and really just take advantage of the opponent's slow start. And Greninja does happen to be a deck that has those slow starts, so you could really build up a Buzzwall and take advantage of him to the fullest extent. Jet Punch is also an excellent option just to weaken up things on the opponent's side of the field, kind of soften some things up for your Zoroark GX, who's going to be hitting on average 120 damage. So if you could Jet Punch a few things here and there, then they could be swept up with Zoroark GX later in the game. Buzzwall GX also, just jives super well with Acerola, since you could get the Buzzwall out there early, Jet Punch around a little bit or finish some things off, then Acerola it up after it's taken a hit, and continue on with a separate attacker. So I do like the inclusion of the 1 tanky Buzzwall GX in there. Now, Lycanroc GX, we do play a 3-2 line of Lycanroc GX. I love Lycanroc GX. I mean, this card has really grown on me. I think Bloodthirsty Eyes is just an incredible ability. Being able to play, it feels like you're playing 2 supporters in 1 turn. When you evolve Lycanroc, when you evolve Rockruff into Lycanroc, you can activate that Bloodthirsty Eyes ability, bring up something on your opponent's side of the field, and then, just a 2 energy attachment. If anytime you have 1 fighting energy attached to a Rockruff, Dangerous Rogue GX on anything on your opponent's side of the field is an active option. Now, Stand-in Zoroark, something that Mind Jack attack does take advantage of your opponent filling their bench. So does Dangerous Rogue GX. Dangerous Rogue GX for 2 energy does 50 damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So, like I said, decks are filling their bench in standard format. Part of what makes Lycanroc GX just so good and so powerful. That attack is so easy to power up. You could easily go in 2 energies, knock out something huge. I mean, you could do 250 damage, 280 with a choice band. You could do up to 300 easily with a strong energy attached if your opponent has a filled bench. So you can knock out anything on your opponent's side of the field, and then just continue to follow up with Claw Slash. Now, Claw Slash is another valid attack you'll find yourself using after you blow something up with Dangerous Rogue GX. Claw Slash does 110 with a strong energy. That could do 130 with a choice band. That could do 160. 160 just short of the amount of damage needed to knock out most Pokemon GX. However, if you've softened things up with Buzzwall, Claw Slash can go for some pointed knockouts as well. It can also knock out some non-EX Pokemon easily, and Claw Slash can easily dispose of a Zoroark GX on your opponent's side of the field. So, Lycanroc GX, very good against Zoroark GX decks too, even if your opponent is trying to throw you some other non-beefy attacker like Mewtwo or something like that. You can just Bloodthirsty Eyes up the Zoroark, and easily go in and take 2 prizes with Claw Slash against a Zoroark. So these Lycanrocs, very valuable against Zoroark, who is a very popular attacker in standard format. And to finish things off, we do have 3 copies of Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele, obviously here as consistency for that Wonder Tag ability. Excellent being able to search out any supporter in your deck. When you put Tapu Lele from your your hand to your bench. But Tapu Lele, since we do play double colorless energy, is here as a backup attacker as well that you can use in a pinch just to deal some extra damage. With Energy Drive, you can easily stack some DCEs onto a Tapu Lele, Choice Band, Professor Kukui, and Tapu Lele's Energy Drive can be swinging for more damage than your opponent might have anticipated pretty quickly if you do happen to be on the ropes, or if you happen to be playing against a deck, a fighting deck or something like that, and you need to supplement your Lycanrocs with somebody who is not just going to get knocked out in one hit very easily. So Tapu Lele is here. I do like 3 copies just for that early turn 1 consistency, and also to help you get the turn 1 Bridget, which is just so important to setting up a Zoroark GX deck. So that's it for the Pokemon. Let's take a look at the items. We play 4 copies of Ultra Ball, which is just, consistency. Helps us get our Pokemon into play, helps us find those Leles, helps us find those Zoroark GXs to start drawing cards as well. Then, interestingly, as is, the case with these Zoroark decks that we've been seeing lately, we do play 4 copies of Puzzle of Time, 2 copies of Choice Band, 2 copies of Field Blower, 2 copies of Enhanced Hammer, 1 Floatstone, 1 Rescue Stretcher, 1 Energy Lotto, which I thought was interesting, and 1 Special Charge. So, let's talk about these items. Already mentioned Ultra Ball. Obviously, we all know why those are there. Puzzle of Time is a little bit more interesting. Now, Puzzle of Time, when you play 2 from your hand at the same time, allows you to get 2 cards from your discard pile back to your hand. So Puzzle of Time can be very useful for reusing resources. You can see that we play a lot of cards in the 1 or 2 of count, including Choice Band. Most decks would usually play 3 Choice Band, but 2 is just fine, especially since we could get it back with Puzzle of Time. And actually, Choice Band is not all that relevant in this deck, since you are not going to be going for a lot of those big one-hit knockouts. Lycanroc GX hits the one-hit knockout with Dangerous Rogue GX. Usually without Choice Band, you could just use Strong Energy to get there just fine. And the amount of times where you need Choice Band are fewer and further between. So you could use these Puzzle of Times to get cards back for the discard pile. That is so good. With Zoroark GX, you're going to be trading all the time, and you're always going to have these huge hands. So it's very easy to get 2 copies of Puzzle of Time into your hand at the same time. Puzzle of Time works a lot like Versus Seeker does, just being able to get something from the discard pile when you need it. Having that malleability in your playing is just so good, because then, cards aren't as rigid. Puzzle of Time can be anything, and that just makes the deck so situational. You are able to take advantage of certain situations with these Puzzle of Times, being able to reuse things. Say you might need a 3rd or a 4th Field Blower in the deck, Puzzle of Time makes it so that you could do that. Say a 3rd or a 4th Enhanced Hammer would be valuable. Puzzle of Time can make that happen. Say a 2nd or a 3rd Rescue Stretcher would be valuable. Puzzle of Time can make that happen as well. Say you want, 2 or 3 copies of Stand-in Zoroark throughout the course of the game. Puzzle of Time can make that happen. If you happen to have whiffed your double colorless energy for turn, you could Puzzle of Time for an Energy Lotto and go use that Energy Lotto to grab maybe the game-winning energy that you happen to have whiffed. Puzzle of Time is just so good in combination with Zoroark. Since you're going to be having those big hands, you're going to have access to this. Also, with Mallow in deck, you have the option to just straight up throw 2 Puzzle of Times onto the top of your deck, or just 1 if you happen to have a puzzle already in your hand, and then trade and draw into it. So with Mallow, you can easily get these double Puzzle of Time plays live a lot easier than you might be able to do without it. So Puzzle of Time, very good for reusing resources. Really like it in combination with Zoroark, and I think Zoroark really makes Puzzle of Time a very usable card in standard format. Talked about Choice Band a little bit. This is mostly a 2-hit KO deck with some 1-hit KO potential, so the Choice Band's not going to be as relevant here, but it is relevant sometimes on Lycanroc, it's relevant sometimes on Zoroark, and it's relevant, on that Mind Jack Zoroark sometimes as well. So 2 copies is just fine, and I wouldn't play any more in this deck. 2 copies of Enhanced Hammer can be very good. First of all, one of my problems with this deck is that it's very weak to Enhanced Hammer. We play like 7 special energy and only 2 regular energy. So Enhanced Hammer can really do a number on a Zoroark deck. Just being able to constantly knock the energy off can be very annoying. But that being said, Enhanced Hammer is also good against Buzzwall decks. It's also good against Gardevoir GX decks for preventing those big one-hit knockouts. So Enhanced Hammer just does a lot of work in standard format. It's good against a lot of different decks, and I think that this deck does a good job of playing it because you can play it in combination with Puzzle of Time to make these 2 copies of Enhanced Hammer a lot more annoying. Ryan was able to show off the utility of Enhanced Hammer when he was playing that Volcanion list that Igor Costa ended up winning the Connecticut Regional Championships with. Ryan Sablehouse played the same list with 2 copies of Enhanced Hammer in it and showed how good Enhanced Hammer can be in pretty much any deck in standard format. So I do agree with its inclusion here. 1 copy of Floatstone can be a little bit annoying. Sometimes I do find that, it's a little bit hard to be mobile with this deck, that it's difficult to get who you want into the active position when you want it. We also only play 2 copies of Guzma, so there's not a whole lot of mobility in this deck, which just takes some foresight. You have to really know how to play this deck in order to play it. You have to be able to see plays happening before they happen. There is a lot of skill required to play this deck. I mean, with Puzzle of Time, there's a lot of options there with, who you promote, who you attack with, when you attack with them. There's a lot of decisions there as well. And then also with just what you trade away, there are a lot of little micro decisions that you have to make with this deck, which makes it pretty difficult to play. 1 copy of Floatstone is fine. I found it to be a little bit tough to play with just 1 copy of Floatstone, but it is enough. You can puzzle it back if you happen to need it. And, for the most part, everybody who's going to be on your bench can attack, so it doesn't really matter who you're promoting and when, because all your Zoroarks are going to be attacking or live attackers. Your Lycanrocs are all live attackers as well, so it doesn't really matter. 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher is just fine. With Puzzle of Time, you have more than just this for recovery, so 1 copy is just fine enough. And then if you puzzle it back in, then you could, shuffle 3 Pokemon in. That's plenty of recovery for a deck like this, so I do agree with 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher too. 2 copies of Field Blower is very good since we don't play any stadiums, and we do need to counter things like Parallel City if your opponent were to play it, since Parallel City does hamper our damage output pretty considerably, as well as our draw. So we do need some out to remove that. We also need outs to remove tools from Garbodor, since Garbodor is going to be very good against this deck too. So 2 copies of Field Blower, important. I wouldn't play any less than it, but we do have the option to recover our Field Blowers with those Puzzle of Times, as I had mentioned previously. 1 copy of Energy Lotto and 1 copy of Special Charge really helps us to take advantage of the low energy count and the fact that we rely on Special Energy. I do love Energy Lotto in here, especially since you can Puzzle of Time for it back, because just whiffing your double colorless energy or your strong energy on the turn that you need it can be a game-losing scenario. So Energy Lotto just boosts that consistency just enough. Also, Special Charge, this, like I said, this deck can be very weak to Enhanced Hammer, so you want to play something to be able to buff that a little bit and at least be able to shuffle your energy back into the deck should your opponent be knocking them off with Enhanced Hammer. So these 2 cards could be reused as well with Puzzle of Time, making them very useful in this Zoroark Lycanroc deck. Moving on to the supporters, we actually play a lot of them, and they're very different. So excited to talk about them. We have 2 copies of Professor Sycamore, 4 copies of N, 2 copies of Professor Kukui, 2 copies of Guzma, 3 Bridget, 1 Acerola, and 1 Mallow. So this is pretty cool. A lot of decks that we've been seeing lately might just play 4 Sycamore, 4 N, and a few copies of Guzma, maybe a Bridget or 2. This really mixes things up with the supporters, and I like that. You can see, starting right off, we only played 2 copies of Professor Sycamore, and that's because resources in this deck are very valuable. Already, you're going to be trading things away and discarding that way. If you were to be discarding with Sycamore all the time as well, that would not be very good for the deck. So you want to take care of your resources, trade, and you're going to be drawing and increasing your hand size with trade instead of doing so with Sycamore. So you're going to be discarding that way instead of discarding everything in my hand all at once to Sycamore. So more often than not, you're not going to be playing Sycamore. You're going to want to be playing N, because N conserves your energy, conserves your puzzles. You could just N and then trade off of the N to draw more cards. And I really like N in here as a 4 of, no-brainer. Starting things off with a Shuffle Draw 6, very good. And then also just being able to hinder your opponent late game with you can end yourself to 3 and then still draw way more cards with trade, so you really do well with N in deck, and I do love 4 copies in here. We also play 2 copies of Professor Kukui, which can help with your math numbers. Also, a nice little draw card. So Professor Kukui, not only makes your Zoroarks attack for more, your Buzzwall can attack for more. That stand-in Zoroark can hit 210, which is really, really good. Your Lycanroc can hit some surprise numbers as well with Claw Slash, or even with Dangerous Rogue GX. If your opponent thinks that they've limited their bench just enough, maybe you can come in with the Professor Kukui and, kind of finesse them with a knockout that they didn't see coming. I do really like 2 Professors Kukui in here, just since we want to play more draw supporters, but we don't necessarily want to play Sycamore, and also it helps with some math, so I do like that. 2 copies of Guzma is a little low, but I think the justification here is that we do just play puzzles, so we can get them back, especially with a deck that does want to be taking those 2-hit knockouts, but also we play Lycanroc GX, so it's not that bad. But with Bloodthirsty Eyes on the Lycanroc GX, combined with 2 copies of Guzma, you're going to have enough access to your opponent's bench when you need it. So 2 copies is just fine, but like I said, it makes the mobility in this deck a little weird at times, when you need to find a switch card or something like that. But like I said, this deck just takes some skill, takes some foresight to play, and definitely some practice. I would practice with this deck before showing up to a big tournament with it, just because there are so many different options and routes to take every turn. 2 copies of Guzman there, 1 copy of Mallow. I've already talked about the utility of Mallow in here. Just works so well with Puzzle of Time, works so well with trade, being able to stack 2 cards onto the top of your deck and then just have access to them whenever you want. I really do love the 1 copy of Mallow in here. Sometimes all you need is just that double colorless, and you could go grab it with Mallow and trade. So I do love the 1 copy of Mallow in here. It's probably sufficient. Don't really think you need more than 1, since you can Puzzle of Time it back should you need to. 1 copy of Acerola can just help your Pokemon tank, and if you are playing against another Zoroark deck or a Golisopod deck or something like that, if you're playing against another deck that is going to be going for 2-hit knockouts, you could just Acerola your own cards up, which is very good, and heal them as well. So I do like having the option for 1 Acerola that can be reused again with Puzzle of Time. These 1-of supporters just go so much further in this deck than they do in most other decks, since you can reuse them with Puzzle of Time reliably, so I do really like that. And then we do play 3 copies of Bridget. Bridget, of course, is just excellent for setting this deck up. You're going to be drawing into the turn 1 Bridget very, very often when you play 3 of them, and then combine with 3 copies of Taboole, 4 Ultra Ball. Then you have 3, and then 3 Lele 6, plus the 4 Ultra Ball 10. You have 10 outs to a turn 1 Bridget. That is just a lot of outs to a turn 1 Bridget, which is excellent and boosts the consistency of this deck. You want to start Bridget almost every game, just so that you can go ahead and start to set up your Zoruas and evolve into Zoroarks as quickly as possible. And that is about it for the supporters. Let's finish things off with the energy count. Like I said, this energy count is a little bit sketchy just because you are so weak to Enhanced Hammer, but it works just fine. We do play that special charge to be able to throw these things back into the deck. We also play Puzzle of Time, so you could get your energy back should you need to. The only attacker in your deck that takes more than 1 energy is the Lycanroc, and you can stick a basic fighting energy onto a Rockruff that can't be Enhanced Hammered. So if you do happen to have a Rockruff in play, you could put a basic fighting on it, and that way it won't be Enhanced Hammered, and then you are live for a Dangerous Rogue GX or a Claw Slash with the attachment of a double colorless energy and an evolution the following turn. So that is a good play. It is a nice option that we do have the 2 copies of basic fighting energy in here. 3 copies of Strong is a little bit interesting, but it's all you need. Your main attacker in this deck is going to be Zoroark GX. You're going to be attacking with Zoroark GX more often, so 5 options for fighting and 4 double colorless energy is just enough to get this deck up and rolling. And then of course we do have our options to recover them, so this ends up being just enough energy to get by with this deck. So thank you all for watching the video. Let me know what you think of Zoroark GX, Lycanroc GX in the comments below. Like I said, this is Ryan Sablehouse's list, so shout out to him. I don't know if he happened to have gotten it from somewhere else, but I at least know this is his list that he was sharing online. So thank you all for watching the video. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Peace.